I wanted to ask, that's not in the list of our questions, but I wanted to ask just quickly, what are you going to do about remote ID? Because I've heard you're not getting, you didn't get an approval for free, and like, what the hell are you going to do? Because
it would be stupid to put a target on your back by saying that you weren't going to comply with a rule,
yeah,
right? So like if you're you know, if you're growing cannabis in a state that doesn't allow you to grow cannabis, it would be stupid for you to go on a live stream and say, yeah, I'm growing cannabis. What's the
Yeah.
government going to do about it?
Right.
So my official answer is that I will comply with the rule.
Cool. Yeah.
Copy.
Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to comply with the rule.
It is.
Especially if you're a 107 person. There's no way under the current writing of the rule to do commercial work with a bind and fly quad built after September 1st, 2016, because any bind and fly quad is supposed to have standard remote ID on it. You cannot do 107 work with a module. But so if iFlight sends me a bind and fly, it doesn't have standard remote ID on it. If it was manufactured after September 1st, 2023, it cannot be flown with a module for 107 purposes.
Can they
purposes.
Wow.
Can they like take the camera off and ship it separately, and then it's like not bind and fly anymore? Like
some people have questioned whether that would be a strategy that would work, but I haven't seen any bind and fly manufacturers taking that strategy. So after September 1st, 2023, it is impossible for me to legally do 107 work with any drone that doesn't have standard remote ID.
So and the standard implies for that like it should transmit your position and your drone position. That's the standard one, right?
Standard, yes, that's true. Standard, but most importantly, standard means that it is built in from the manufacturer.
Yeah.
It cannot be retrofitted with a module. So if you have a drone that was made before September 1st, 2023, and you want to do want to do 107 work with it, you can put a module on it. But as any drone made after September 1st, 2023 must have standard remote ID to do 107 work. This is not just going to affect me. Think about all the pilots flying Cinelifters. Those are all home. Those don't have standard remote ID.
Right.
Well, they can like for Cinelifter, it's not a big deal because like, well, I have this remote ID module. I'm not sure if it's like where's my scene.
No,
like,
but
legally, but it's quite big. But like Cinelifter, no problem, you know.
But it's not about the size though. Legally, if your drone was made after September 1st, 2023, it cannot use a module for 107 work. It has to have standard.
Well, if it's bind and fly, but if it's like motors off and you put them on by yourself, it's not bind and fly anymore. I don't know.
No. You're missing the point. After September 1st, 2023, you cannot do 107 work except with a drone that has standard remote ID.
Oh, really?
Period. Period.
So you cannot use drone that you build by yourself unless you build in standard remote ID also.
But you can't do that because the requirements to have standard remote ID, the record keeping requirements and so forth, some people may do that, but it's not just like, okay, I have standard remote ID.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
But that's why there are rumors of that there might be pushing the date further away.
Well, they can push the enforcement date back. But I don't think. I mean, it's gonna.
At some point, the technology gonna evolve, and then we're gonna have like a 1 by 1 millimeter remote ID units. All
right. So my that's a real problem.
Yeah.
And my official answer is that I'm complying with the rules. But after September 1st, if you see me review an iFlight drone, that's definitely 107 work because I am a business and everything I make for my content is 107 work, and it doesn't have standard remote ID in it. Therefore, it cannot be fully compliant with the rules. And there is no way. I would simply have to stop reviewing bind and fly drones over 250 gram limit doesn't matter for 107 work.
It does not.
I could only do work with drones that have standard remote ID built in.
I didn't know that. Like that, I thought if it's just
preposterous.
Damn.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I thought
it's also crazy because there's like, can you tell us about the products available to use? Right? I mean, like what? Like there are not drones out there to buy that have this built into it right now.
Well, unless it's
there
DJI.
are DJI Avata.
Yeah.
So there are no FPV hobby drones that have standard remote ID built in because you would have to build it into the flight controller. And Betaflight could implement remote ID, but it would have to then be it's not just the technology, but the administrative process of having the FAA accept and approve and provide a declaration of compliance for your system. And an open source flight controller with open source code, there's a real question of whether they would ever do that, since it's not tamper resistant.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a little bit of discussion between Betaflight developers and the ArduPilot developers, because ArduPilot developer wanted to do some remote ID, and we were like, we don't even understand. Like, we can build in that thing, but then everyone can recompile and just remove that stuff from like
I mean, I wish you would. I mean, who knows? The FAA might give you a declaration of compliance, in which case, more power to you.
Well,
You never
like
know,
the thing is, like, you know, most of the developers of Betaflight that know how to do that, they live in Australia, and they don't give a crap about that. Well, yet, but like it's probably coming to them. Like, but yeah. So we'll see. All right. So the next question sort of like lies in the like. I've heard in your live stream that there are like some Chinese companies saying that they have to comply with a ban of sending parts outside of China. So I didn't get it. Is it China government doing that, or is like US government doing that? Like, what is happening? And
so the Chinese government has announced that there will be new export controls on. They are specifically targeting drones that are intended for military use, which is easy. Just say, "Oh, not for military use," and then, okay, so it's not intended for military use. And drones that have certain technologies that are adaptable for military use. So obviously, like if you had a drone with, I'm just making this up, but like if you had a drone with a night vision camera or a drone with a laser rangefinder, those are the kind of things you could imagine they might be thinking about. But the problem is that they specifically said, there's a paragraph where they talk about high performance recreational drones being adapted to military use. And it seems pretty clear that they're thinking about FPV drones. A lot of the footage that has come out into the world recently of FPV drones being weaponized. And the concern is that they are going to target recreational drones that might be adapted to military use, but that don't explicitly have any military purpose.
So, and so you're mentioning like there is a document, like where we can even see this document. I tried to research, I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, so we linked it on the news, not last week, but the week before. It's the Chinese. It's the Chinese Department of Economic whatever made a statement about it, and we've gotten some statements from some vendors who say they don't think they're going to be affected.
Yeah,
and some statements like SpeedyBee sent out an email blast where they basically said, we're not going to sell these drones anymore. You can't export them. So I think we're currently in a transitional period where the rule has gone into effect, but it remains to be seen exactly how the government is going to enforce it.
Yeah.
Like there will probably be some companies who fly under the radar, some companies who take a risk and get away with it, other companies who get slapped down. No one really knows, and different companies are deciding how they're going to deal with it. But we at least have seen a few drone models where you won't be able to import them or export them anymore.
Well, what a crazy world. Well, that drone, that's probably also, they need to integrate remote ID in it too. So that's like...
They're never going to do that though, are they?
Yeah.
There is absolutely no reason for a Chinese company making a bind and fly drone to put an American remote ID. Never mind that it would be a giant hassle for them to do that. Like standard remote ID must be integrated into the flight controller.
Yeah.
So how are they even going to do that?
Well, or ESC. Like ESC is a closed source, like BL Heli 32. Maybe like
the ESC. There was a scheme that some people came up with to put some kind of cryptographic information or something in the ESC, so that could fulfill the tamper resistant requirement. But like with a standard remote ID, the aircraft has to refuse to take off if it doesn't have like GPS lock.
Yeah, well, you can do it with with ESC if like if instead of telemetry wire you wire it with the remote ID unit, and then remote ID unit tells ESC if arming is allowed, or like that's kind of possible.
Oh, I can see. Yeah, no, I can see
to
that.
avoid Betaflight because. And then BL Heli 32, maybe they can do it, or Keys, I don't know. Maybe Keys will do it.
So, yeah, maybe. But the thing is, I just don't, unless it hurts their sales, And then once it starts hurting their sales, then they'll be like, oh, maybe we need to do something about this. But until it starts hurting their sales, there's no reason for a Chinese company to go through the administrative hassle. They have to serialize every drone. You have to serialize every drone. You have to keep records on the drone. There are all these record keeping requirements that.
Have you thought about finding a person from FAA? I'm not gonna lie, because I was trying to do that. Just find a person from FAA and just talk with him, like, you know, not for the live stream, but for recording, and just ask him for reasoning. You know, you probably cannot change anything, but like maybe he can even give us some answers. You know, that'd be interesting for community. Like, I was trying to do that. Maybe I'm just not big enough YouTuber. I never get an answer, but maybe you will.
Well, the people who are doing that work, and they deserve a lot of credit for it, are the FPV Freedom Coalition and the Flight Test Community Association. Those guys, I have to say, Dave Messina at FPV Freedom Coalition is an absolute animal when it comes to just finding people, talking to them, attending meetings, participating in working groups. He is unbelievable. It is a real skill to know how to sort of navigate that bureaucracy, and he has it. I'm not gonna sell that story because he told it to me, and I'm not sure I should.
Damn it! All right, almost got Bardwell to say it.
But he was disinvited from some meetings because he was too annoying.
All right.
The unofficial reason he was disinvited was that he was too annoying in the meeting. Because he kept saying, "This is bullshit. We should do this differently," and they got tired of hearing it.
Well, that's the thing. So you cannot. You can talk to him, but he will not provide you the answers you want to hear, right? So it has to be someone from FAA who is putting these rules up.
They've talked to people in the FAA. They have had a lot of communication with people in the FAA. That's what I'm saying.
But like the community didn't hear it, you know. It should be someone, you know.
I think that's a little unfair because FPV Freedom Coalition puts out. I mean, if you go to their YouTube channel, which they should publicize it more. They've put this stuff out. They've talked about this stuff. It maybe doesn't get out as much as it could. The problem is that you could get communication from like one person in the FAA, but the actual decision makers, it's a very big organization. And even if you have one guy who's a fan of FPV and supports you and trying to work, there's a lot of very, very big moving parts. I think people overestimate the degree to which the FAA is the bad guy here. A lot of people don't realize that, you know, the drone footage that people are seeing that is making hobbyists freak out, like DHS was showing footage like that to Congress years ago before anybody in the hobby space had any inkling that drones could be used in that way. And like, I don't know that for a fact, but like, I assume, because I've had people tell me that the real motivation for remote ID is Congress being told by DHS, this is going to be a real problem and you need to get on top of it. And I believe it. And everybody looks at just the FAA as the bad guy, but really, in a lot of ways, I think it's DHS who is really pushing this. And people don't realize that. They're like, well, if we can just tell the guys at FAA how wholesome FP is and how useful it is, then they'll change their minds. And I'm like, you guys don't know what you're up against. But now that some of this footage is coming out of drones being used in these ways that hobbyists don't want to think about, maybe we can have a better understanding of what we're actually up against.
But like my question was like, do you think you can find the person to talk to that like just
no?
Like,
I mean, who could if I could get the administrator of the FAA in an interview and I could talk to him, what would I say that would change? Because I'm going to say, listen, bro, FPV is important. Drones are important. You guys are being mean and you should do things differently.
Yeah.
And he would say, good talk, son. And then he would go back and he would do what he was going to do because he's thinking he's being told by Congress. Let's be clear. Congress passed a law.
Yeah.
The FAA Reauthorization Act of, I think it was 2018, but I'm not sure that's the right year.
Yeah.
That said the FAA must pass remote ID. They must implement remote ID.
All right.
At that point, the FAA has no choice in the matter.
Yeah, but they have a lot of choices. If like, how do they agree with FRIAs, right? They can FAA could say, all right, if you're under 20 feet you can fly without remote ID. They could
Yep.
say all that, but they didn't. So it's also
Yep.
FAA.
100. No, you're right. They
So
have.
maybe you could
they
ask.
have.
Maybe you could find a person that can ask these type of questions, right?
I
Why
don't
racers
think-
have to care about it? Like, and then maybe he would answer you something.
because they find in my personal opinion, they find the whole thing super fucking annoying, because they, again, in my opinion, they care most about regulating full-scale aviation, and this whole drone thing that Congress dumped on their plate is not a thing they understand. It's not a thing they want to do. It's like you're an expert at programming assembly language, and your boss comes to you and says, I need you to write a web page for us. And you're like, I don't fucking program HTML. I don't write web pages. I don't do CSS. And the boss is like, yeah, but we need you to get it done. Like, fine. And you just hate the whole thing, and you wish it would go away, and you're bad at it. And that is where the FAA is at. Again, in my opinion, they are at least knowledgeable about full-scale aviation. Now they get drones jumped on their plate, and they're like, I don't know, fine, we'll do this. And then they do a shitty job of it, and then we come and we annoy them by saying you're doing a shitty job, and they're like, why would they listen? Why would they?
I think we lost my camera. Let me try to recover it.
Did, yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, it's really annoying and it's really frustrating, but I think that, like, sort of your little rant there sheds a lot of light to kind of how small we are.
Yep.
And we really are, and we think that we're a big group of people, or some people think, I don't know, but it's just, we're a very small group of people, and we're up against, like, these scary videos, especially with everything going on now with Russia and Ukraine, and how much, like, we've seen this weaponization, like, that's, like, really brought it even more to the forefront. And it's but, like, hey, we just want to fly. I don't know.
I know.
It's tough.
I know.
It's really frustrating for me.
I want to reply to Unknown Subject's comment because I disagree with what you're saying. And I think there is a misconception that causes RC and FPV hobbyists to turn on themselves and make enemies of each other when we're not actually the real enemy. The comment is, you were and are part of the problem. Needing the attention through YouTube is what drew attention to our hobby. RC flying was a thing long before you all started posting and monetizing. The thought process there is that if we hadn't drawn attention to the hobby by posting videos on YouTube, and the other place this goes, although Unknown Subject's comment doesn't go there, is that if we hadn't been irresponsible doing things like diving buildings or flying irresponsible, then this wouldn't have happened. That is categorically wrong. That is categorically wrong. The footage that we're seeing right now of drones being used in certain ways, I'm trying to be careful with my wording here so we don't get demonetized, but I think you know what I'm talking about. The footage that has started coming, that the ability to use a drone in that way existed. The minute a drone was created, someone could have weaponized it. The minute that happened, this was an inevitability. If we hadn't had these glorious years from like 2015 to like 2020, maybe 2022, where FPV was this beautiful hobby that we were just having fun like hippies out in the woods, we still would have come to this point where someone who wants to kill another person would have said, hey, you know what? I can do that with a drone. This is really effective. And Congress and the DHS and the people who are actually driving this would have said, we need to do something about this. So no, it is not the hobbyists. It's not the guys doing the building dives. It is inherent to the nature of drones that they can be used in this way, that they are actually very effective at being used in this way. And therefore, it is the nature. It's like the first time somebody invented a firecracker, eventually someone was going to decide to make dynamite and bombs out of it. And so the idea that if we only had been nice and not done things with the firecrackers, we wouldn't have come to this other thing. Sorry, that's not how it ever was going to work.
Yeah. We probably know all that. I'm not going to say anything new. What kind of makes me a little bit angry, and I don't understand it, is that like we understand that drones can be used for like killing people, right? But obviously if someone's going to do that, he's not going to comply with remote ID. Like,
remote ID is a farce.
and
Remote ID is completely ineffective.
yeah, so it's
It is a
only
farce.
it's only the people that are, like, want to be lawful, want to be good guys, just fly their drones only, for fun. Like, only basically us will be affected. Like, we're gonna be affected, not the bad guys. I feel
Yep.
like so.
No, 100%.
That makes me a little bit frustrating.
The-
like,
the-
that's my opinion. I don't know for sure,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, the fact that remote ID is an ineffective, bad, it is overly restrictive, it's an imposition on freedom. All of those things are true. And also, that doesn't change the reason why the government is trying to do this thing and doing it badly. And those two things are separate and should be considered separately.
Yeah.